Well met by moonlight, dear ones. I am Curiosity, and this is my jamboree, a firelit gathering for explorers of the uncanny, the frightening, and the hard to explain. Tonight, we spin tales of terrifying Uber trips, bizarre chat-up lines, and something singing in the darkness. So settle in by the crackling fire, lean in close, hold your hands out to warm them up, and let's begin. Our first story is from r/Let's Not Meet, shared by ItWasntMeBoys. So this happened about 4 months ago now. Maybe more, but I really don't know for sure. Anyway, I was 19 years old and was going home from university after classes. I usually take my keys with me, but around that time I'd lost them, and my mum was yet to take me to get a new copy. I remember I kept insisting, but she wouldn't listen. So what I did was knock on the door to get my younger brother's attention, so he'd come and let me in. But my mum also took his keys, and just left him there locked up as well. I asked my brother to pass me my charger from my room, and I called one of my aunties to see if I could go hang out at her workplace in the meantime. She said yes, and then told me to call an Uber. Now, the Uber didn't pick me up exactly at home. It was in the house across the street instead. No special reason, it just did. The moment I saw the guy, he gave me a kind of weird vibe, but I also tend to be paranoid every time I so much as hop in a taxi, so I just got in, rolled down the windows, and kept a grip on both of my phones. It all seemed relatively normal until we got to the area where my aunt's workplace was. He just completely drove past it, and claimed he was following the GPS when I asked him about it, but he wouldn't let me see said GPS. He seemed to know exactly where he was going. Now, I was kinda doomed from the beginning, because I don't know directions, and I could only rely on the driver being a decent person and recognizing the area, which I did. But wherever he was taking me, I had no idea. I remember seeing this fountain that I could recognize from when Mum drove to my uncle's place, but that was way further away from my aunt's place. By now I was kind of thinking of what to do, because this guy drove past a heck ton of empty houses, and a couple of them even seemed to still be under construction. Then he stopped near a place that looked like the end of civilization. We were literally on a hill, and then he turned off the car. I got lucky in so many ways looking back on it. My phone had no credit, and as soon as I thought of that, my aunt called me and asked, "Where are you?" And I literally felt my heart drop because I had no idea, and this dude was just staring at me. I said I didn't know, and asked him, "Hey, where did you take me?" And he replied with, "I wouldn't know what to tell you, kid." That was enough for me. I grabbed my backpack and opened the door real quick with a loud, "That's fine, I'll see myself out," and hauled ass like I hadn't in a very long time. I remember even being afraid of carrying my backpack on my back, in case he chased me and pull on it, so I was holding it in my hand, with my hoodie wrapped around my waist, as I thought of where to hide. I thought of knocking on someone's door, but for some reason that didn't seem safe to me at the moment. I remember telling my aunt not to hang up, because he was still following me in the car. Then I saw an empty barren surrounded by concrete walls, and a strong bar gate, except there was enough space under the gate to crawl in, so I literally threw the backpack and then crawled under. There was a huge electric control box, and I opened it to crouch inside and hide, my aunt still on the phone. She, my other aunt, and my uncle were all on a call with each other, putting credit on my phone and asking for my live location through WhatsApp, because I had no idea where I was, literally in the middle of nowhere. I waited there for like 2 hours, and this guy wouldn't leave. I even had to go pee outside the box, and immediately ran back inside. There were even tiny spiders and old honeycombs, so I was fighting both my arachnophobia and trypophobia. At some point I'm guessing the guy left, and my uncle got there in his truck. He didn't know where I was, so he kept honking and telling me to tell him when I could hear it closer. And then I finally did, and got out. For a while I thought maybe this had been a misunderstanding, and I was just going to jump into some guy's car like a maniac. But then when I got home after staying at my aunt's pharmacy for a while until my mum, who still didn't know much about what had happened, picked me up, I checked the Uber app, and not only did it say I'd already paid, but it also said I made it to my destination. I told my aunts not to tell my mum about it, because she goes insane at the minor inconvenience, so telling her this would only freak her out, and she wouldn't be any help. I only let her know when I called her to come get me, and on our way to get a copy of that key, because of course, something bad had to happen until she actually listened to me, and nowadays she always puts credit on my phone. Anyway, so that's what went down. I had to Indiana Jones that ish twice, and to this day my family brags about how I was able to keep myself perfectly composed and react quickly, which I'm still shocked about. I remember seeing broken glass and metal bars laying around and telling my aunt, if I'm going down, I'm taking him with me, in a joking manner because her blood sugar levels were screwing her over. On our way home, my mum told me I wasn't in hysterics because I was in shock, and that it had hit me the next day. It didn't. I kept going around as normal. But last week she brought it up again and asked if I thought I was going to die. I said of course, but that I also knew freaking out would only make me an easier target, or just not help at all. Anyway, when I remember it, more than scared, I feel angry. I could have been one of the many, many girls who just disappear and are later found dead on a random hill or ditch. And I can't say I suffer survivor's guilt, because in all honesty I don't. But I can't help but think that could have been me, whenever another kid or teenager is on the news as missing or found dead. It could have gone terribly wrong. My parents believed this guy was a rookie who maybe felt sorry for me and let me go, because if he'd wanted to, he could have hurt me with some sort of weapon, or just tried to kill me right then and there. I don't even know anymore. I sent his profile to all the girls I know so that if they happen to get him as their Uber driver they can cancel. Since then I don't take Ubers anymore. That sounds like a truly horrible night. Well done you for getting through it and keeping your head straight. No easy thing in a situation like that. Our next story was sent to me by RIPRobbieColtrane. Last week I was at a party. Pretty big, like 100 people. It's a bit of a long story I won't go into, but the person whose party it was is more of a friend of a friend. But we'd hung out recently, and she happened to invite me. Anyway, the upshot is I knew about 3.5 people there. It was pretty subdued, to be honest. You'd think there'd be more energy with that many people, but there wasn't a lot of energy. They'd booked a DJ who looked like he'd stepped out of a time machine from the 1990s. Basically a shuffle button with some light boxes and a habit of talking over the songs trying to get people to dance. It wasn't horrible, but not party of the century either. As I was entertaining myself at the last dregs of the formerly hot buffet, they skimped on the music, but I'll forgive anything for some veggie tempura. Someone walked by and muttered something to me. It wasn't just a hi or something like that. It wasn't the start of a conversation, but as I looked up, beer-battered mushroom in hand, the guy turned and smiled, still walking, and just did a full turn to carry on away from me. So far, so whatever. But there was something about the smile and the haircut that clicked in my head. 6 years ago I was living in Scotland. For context, basically the other end of the UK from where I'm living now, the city where this party was happening. I was in my early 20s then, and I was in between finishing uni and moving back to England for my job. I was out with some friends, just at the pub, nothing wild, and it was my turn to get the shots in for the table. I was at the bar, waiting to get some attention, when this guy slides up to me. He had this really distinctive haircut. No idea how to describe it properly, but it was like a mullet, but really, really short on top, and his smile was super white. Like, teeth aren't made that colour white. Like, if there'd been a black light, his teeth would have been visible from a street away. Normally I wouldn't remember details like this, but his behaviour cemented him in my mind. He started some gentle chat-up. Nothing I wasn't used to, but I politely turned him down. Something about getting back to the girls. He rolled his eyes really dismissively, which even if I'd been interested to begin with, would have turned me off forever. Then he said hands down the weirdest thing a guy has ever said when trying to chat me up. I'm all the girls you need. If you're racking your brains trying to process that, join the club. But he leaned in and smirked at me like it was the cleverest chat-up line ever, no fail, that I'd beg him to take me back to his place. Happily, I didn't have to come up with a reply, because I got the attention of the guy behind the bar. I spent the intervening 6 years telling that story every now and then. When the conversation got around to creepy chat-up lines or whatever, it was funny. It was creepy at the time, obviously, but pretty much immediately afterwards I started to laugh about it. Then the party last week. I'm high 90s sure this is the same guy. Hasn't changed his haircut in 6 years for one thing, but I've never seen it on another human being. So what was this? World's craziest coincidence? I never saw him for the rest of the party, and believe me, I was keeping an eye out. Look, mullet guy with the widest teeth and the weirdest chat-up lines. If we do meet again, can you tell me what your deal is? I don't know, OP. Are you sure you want to know? Well, 6 years from now, when you see him again, be sure to let me know how it goes. Our last story was sent in by Santiago, a bit of a first for the Jamboree, as we delve possibly into the world of the paranormal. I grew up in a very rural part of Wales, where my parents still live. It has its advantages and disadvantages, like living anywhere. I never had any fear of going out after dark, for example. The roads were really safe for biking, though admittedly I took this for granted a bit more than is reasonable and never wore a helmet. I had a couple of friends one village over. It was only a few miles down the road, so not a long bike ride or even that long of a walk. One night I'd been at a friend's place watching a marathon of X-Files when it got to be time to head home, just coming up to midnight. As usual, when I'd watched a bunch of X-Files, it had left me a little spooked. It was one of those still, quiet summer nights. Warm but not muggy, a clear sky above and no sound at all. Though as you know by now, I wasn't exactly amazing at road safety. I was sensible enough not to wear headphones on the narrow road, where you'd have very little chance to get out of a car's way. Not that there were many cars on that ridiculously tiny road. Now it was about a 15-minute bike ride, which doesn't seem long, but this road is very straight, very narrow, and extremely dark, because the verge at some points is about 5 feet high, like the road was dug really deep so it could be flat, and with trees on both sides. It was okay. A lifetime in the countryside gave me excellent night vision, so I never bothered with the light. See what I mean about being a champion of road safety? At least my bike had reflectors. I wasn't concerned with cars, but my lizard brain was still tweaked from whatever 90s monsters we'd been binging that evening, so I wanted to take the edge off. No, there weren't monsters, none of the wild animals are even that scary, but try telling that unconscious part of you that still thinks it sees faces in everything. I had a couple of tactics for not spooking myself when biking home. One was to loudly sing cheerful songs as I glided down the road. Again, remember my goal wasn't to be stealthy. The only thing I was banishing was the lingering feeling of unease from several hours of watching sci-fi horror. So there I was, rattling down the road on my somewhat unnecessarily geared mountain bike. I live in Wales, but not a massively hilly part, singing Disney songs at the top of my voice, probably mixed in with a bit of ABBA, knowing me at the time. Or should I say, knowing me, knowing you, aha? I was on the longest, emptiest stretch of the road when it happened, and I almost jumped out of my skin. More importantly, I almost jumped off my bike. I heard another voice singing along with me. I should say, not I heard someone some way distant sing shouting along with me, though that would have shut me up immediately as well. I mean I heard someone singing with me, as though they were right next to me. It wasn't my voice echoing. It didn't sound like anyone's voice that I knew, and that's not the only reason I knew it wasn't an echo. You see, I was singing a whole new world. Well, the Jasmine parts anyway. And this voice that sang right next to me sang, "Don't you dare close your eyes," at the right moment of the song. I mean, that's scary no matter what, right? Hearing that out of nowhere? But it wasn't the part I was singing. It was the part that goes with what I was singing. I definitely have heard things that weren't there before. Not full-on hallucinations, but sometimes when I'm anxious I mishear things. Most of the time if I'm anxious and in a crowd, so any time I'm in a crowd, I keep hearing people speak my name. I've learned to tune that out, but this wasn't some distorted syllable or two. It was distinctly a voice, other than my own, singing a distinct tune with distinct words. I pedalled much faster. Thank God for those 21 gears I never normally needed more than 3 of. Got home fine, and the incident didn't repeat itself that night or ever since. Mind you, I took a different way home the next few times after that. I guess, thank you, weird Disney ghost, for completing my duet, and thank you for never doing it a second time. The sun is rising, and the only people singing are the ones we can see. The Jamboree is at an end once more. My thanks to everyone who sent in stories or gave me permission to narrate theirs. Remember, I upload new stories on Mondays and Fridays, so be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out. If you have any thoughts about the stories I've narrated, why not leave them in the comments below? And don't forget, if you enjoyed your time by the fireside, to practice throwing like buttons into little straw targets. If you'd like a story of yours narrated, I have a submission form linked in the description, and I'd love to learn more of your curious experiences and unexplained happenings. I will see you soon, dear ones, and until then, may your nights be dark and your dreams just a little curious.